The evening air was warm as Amara Jenkins sat in the back seat of her mother's old blue sedan, singing softly to herself. At 8 years old, she was small for her age, with bright eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Her beaded braids clicked gently as she swayed to the music playing on the radio. They were heading home after her dance class, and Amara was still buzzing with energy from the hour of movement and music. Her mother, Denise, looked tired after a long day of work, but she smiled when she caught Amara's eye in the rearview mirror. "You had fun today, baby?" "Yes. Ms. Tanya said I'm getting really good at my turns," Amara replied, demonstrating by spinning her finger in a circle. The streets were getting darker as the sun set behind the buildings of their neighborhood. This part of town wasn't the nicest. Denise had been saving for years to move to a better school district, but it was home. They knew every corner store owner, every neighbor, every pothole in the road. Amara was about to tell her mother about the upcoming dance recital when flashing lights suddenly appeared behind them, bathing the car interior in alternating blue and red. Her mother's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What's happening, Mom?" Amara asked, turning to look through the back window at the police car. "It's okay, sweetie. The police just want us to pull over." "I'm sure everything's fine," Denise said. But Amara could hear the tension in her voice. Her mother signaled and carefully pulled to the side of the road, putting the car in park. She took a deep breath before rolling down her window. Amara watched as a tall police officer approached their car. The setting sun glinted off his badge. His face was serious, but not angry as he bent down to speak to her mother. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm Officer David Reynolds with the City Police Department. Did you know you have a taillight out?" "No, sir, I didn't," Denise replied, her voice steady but quieter than usual. "I'm sorry about that. I'll need to see your license and registration, please," Officer Reynolds said, shining his flashlight briefly into the car. The light passed over Amara and she blinked against its brightness. "Hello there," the officer said, noticing her. His voice softened slightly. "What's your name?" Amara looked to her mother, who nodded that it was okay to answer. "I'm Amara. I'm 8, she said, holding up 8 fingers. "Nice to meet you, Amara," Officer Reynolds replied with a small smile before turning his attention back to Denise, who was searching through her purse for her wallet. "It's in here somewhere," Denise said, her movements becoming more hurried as she dug through the bag. "I promise I have it." Amara could see her mother's hands starting to shake slightly. She knew. Her mom always got nervous around police officers. She'd overheard her talking with Aunt Keisha about how to act if they ever got pulled over. Keep your hands visible, move slowly, be respectful no matter what. "Take your time, ma'am," Officer Reynolds said, but he remained watchful, one hand resting near his belt. Denise finally located her wallet and handed over her license. "The registration is in the glove compartment," she said. "Is it okay if I reach over to get it?" "Go ahead," the officer replied, stepping back slightly. As Denise leaned across to open the glove compartment, a stack of papers and old receipts tumbled out. She scrambled to catch them, her movements becoming more flustered. "Mom, I can help," Amara offered, unbuckling her seatbelt to lean forward. "Stay in your seat, honey," her mother said quickly. Officer Reynolds noticed Amara's movement. "Please, keep your daughter secured in her seat, ma'am," he said, his tone becoming more authoritative. "Yes, of course, I'm sorry," Denise replied. "Amara, buckle up right now, please." Amara obeyed, but she kept watching the interaction with curious eyes. Her mother finally located the registration and handed it to the officer with a slightly trembling hand. Officer Reynolds examined the documents, then looked back at Denise. "Ms. Jenkins, are you aware that your license expired last month?" Denise's face fell. "No, I didn't realize. With work and everything, I must have missed the notice." "And when was the last time you had your car inspected?" "This sticker is from last year." Amara could see her mother's shoulders slump slightly. "I've been meaning to take it in, but the shop near us closed down and the next closest one is across town. I've been working double shifts to save for a new place and I just haven't had the time." The officer nodded, his face unreadable as he wrote something on his notepad. Amara noticed how quiet the street had become, with just the occasional car passing by. The police car's lights continued to flash, making strange shadows dance across the sidewalk. "Is my mom in trouble?" Amara asked suddenly, her voice small but clear in the tense silence. Officer Reynolds looked up, seeming a bit surprised by the direct question. He studied Amara for a moment before answering. "Your mom needs to update some important papers for her car and her driving permission," he explained, using simpler terms. "It's like how you need to turn in your homework at school." Amara nodded seriously. "My teacher gives us extra time sometimes when something happens at home. My mom works really hard. Sometimes she's so tired she falls asleep helping me with my reading." Denise turned to look at her daughter, a mix of emotions crossing her face. "Amara, honey, it's okay. The officer is just doing his job." Officer Reynolds stood straight again, tapping his pen against his notepad. He looked from Denise to Amara and back again. Something in his expression shifted slightly. "Ms. Jenkins, I'm going to issue you a warning for the expired license. You'll need to get that renewed within the next week. I'm also giving you a fix-it ticket for the taillight and expired inspection. If you get those taken care of within 30 days and bring proof to the station, the fine will be reduced." "Thank you, officer," Denise said, relief evident in her voice. "I appreciate that. I'll take care of everything right away." As Officer Reynolds returned to his car to write up the paperwork, Amara leaned forward again. "Mom, is a ticket bad?" Denise sighed. "It's not good, baby. It means we'll have to pay some money, but it could have been worse. He's being fair." When the officer returned with the paperwork, he handed it to Denise along with her license and registration. "There's a DMV office on 4th Street that's open late on Thursdays, and Jackson's Auto Shop on Westview has reasonable prices for inspections and repairs." "Thank you for the information," Denise said, genuinely surprised by the helpful advice. Before leaving, Officer Reynolds bent down again and looked at Amara. "You make sure your mom gets that taillight fixed, okay? It's important for safety." Amara nodded solemnly. "I will. I'm good at remembering things. My teacher says I have an elephant's memory." This brought a small smile to the officer's face. "That's a good quality to have." He straightened up and tipped his hat slightly. "Drive safely, Ms. Jenkins. Have a good evening." As they watched the police car pull away, Denise let out a long breath. "You okay back there, sweetheart?" "I'm okay," Amara said, still watching the receding taillights of the police car. "He wasn't as scary as I thought he would be." Denise started the car again, checking carefully before pulling back onto the road. "No, he wasn't," she admitted. "But not all situations turn out that way, Amara. That's why we always need to be careful and respectful." As they drove the rest of the way home, Amara thought about the police officer. How his voice had changed when he spoke to her, how he'd explained things in a way she could understand, and how he'd given her mom extra time to fix the problems, instead of making things harder for them. She didn't know yet how this brief encounter would stick in her memory, or how she would see Officer Reynolds again in very different circumstances. She couldn't have guessed how a simple traffic stop would lead to a moment that would change both their lives and affect their whole community. For now, she was just a little girl heading home with her tired mother, the rhythm of the road lulling her into thoughts of dance recitals and school projects, while the city lights blinked on around them one by one, like stars coming out in an urban sky. 3 weeks had passed since the night of the traffic stop. True to her word, Denise had taken care of her expired license the very next day, waiting in line for 2 hours at the DMV with Amara coloring quietly beside her. The taillight was fixed too, thanks to a neighbor who knew a bit about cars and charged them only for the parts. Life had returned to its normal rhythm. Denise working long hours at the hospital as a nursing assistant, Amara attending school and her weekly dance classes. But their normal was about to be disrupted in a way neither of them could have anticipated. It started with a letter. Denise sat at their small kitchen table, brow furrowed as she read the official-looking document that had arrived in that day's mail. "What's wrong, Mom?" Amara asked, looking up from her homework. She could always tell when something was bothering her mother. Denise sighed, folding the paper and tucking it back into its envelope. "Nothing for you to worry about, baby. Just some grown-up business about our building." But it was something to worry about. Their apartment complex, already in poor condition, had been bought by a new company. Rents were going up, and repairs that had been promised for years were still being ignored. Several families in the building had formed a tenants' association to fight back, and Denise had reluctantly joined them. Now they were being summoned to court. The building owners had filed a complaint against the tenants' association, claiming they were damaging the property's reputation with their protests and complaints to the city housing authority. "Will we have to move?" Amara asked that night as Denise tucked her into bed. Children always understood more than adults gave them credit for. "I hope not," Denise replied, smoothing Amara's colorful blanket. "That's why we have to stand up for ourselves sometimes. When things aren't right, you can't always just walk away." Amara nodded, her eyes serious in the dim light of her bedside lamp. "Like in my book about Dr. King. He stood up for what was right." Denise smiled, touching her daughter's cheek gently. "Yes, baby, just like that. But not as dangerous, I promise. This is just a small case about our building. Nothing to be scared about." The day of the court hearing arrived with gray skies and a threat of rain. Denise had taken the day off work, losing wages she could ill afford to spare. She dressed Amara in her nicest clothes, a purple dress with white tights and the shiny black shoes they saved for special occasions. "Why do I have to come?" Amara asked as Denise braided her hair carefully. "Because Ms. Gloria can't watch you today, and I don't want you missing school to sit home alone," Denise explained, securing the last braid with a purple elastic. "You'll bring a book and sit quietly in the back of the courtroom. It might be boring, but it won't take all day." Amara didn't mind. She was curious about the court. She'd seen it on TV shows, but never in real life. In her mind, it was a grand place with tall columns and people in flowing black robes. The reality was more mundane. A boxy building downtown with security guards at the entrance and long hallways with hard benches lining the walls. They arrived early and found seats in a crowded waiting area, surrounded by other people from their building. Mrs. Washington, an elderly woman from the third floor, patted Amara's hand. "Such a good girl, coming to support your mama," she said, with a warm smile. "My grandbabies are too little for this kind of thing." Mr. Chen from the apartment next to theirs offered Amara a peppermint from his pocket. "Court days are long days," he said with a wink. "Sugar helps." Despite her initial excitement, Amara soon grew restless as they waited. Denise let her walk up and down the hallway, as long as she stayed within sight. It was during one of these little explorations that Amara saw him, Officer Reynolds. He wasn't in his patrol car this time, but she recognized him immediately. He wore the same uniform, standing tall near one of the courtroom doors, talking to a woman in a suit. Amara stopped in her tracks, watching him curiously. Officer Reynolds looked different here, more relaxed, smiling as he spoke. He didn't notice her at first, but when he turned to walk toward the water fountain, their eyes met. For a moment, he looked confused, like he was trying to place her face. Then recognition dawned. "Hello there," he said, stopping a few feet away from her. "Amara, right? From the traffic stop a few weeks ago?" Amara nodded, surprised and a little pleased that he remembered her name. "Yes, sir. My mom got her license fixed," she offered proudly. "And the taillight, too." He smiled at that. "That's good to hear. What brings you to court today? Everything okay?" Before Amara could answer, Denise appeared at her side, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. Her expression was guarded as she recognized the officer. "Officer Reynolds," she acknowledged with a slight nod. "My daughter isn't bothering you, I hope." "Not at all, Ms. Jenkins," he replied. "Just saying hello. Are you here for traffic court?" Denise shook her head. "No, a housing dispute. Our building's owner is trying to intimidate the tenants who've been fighting for better conditions." She hesitated, then added, "What about you? I wouldn't have expected to see you here today." "I'm testifying in a case," he explained. "Nothing major, just a dispute between neighbors that escalated. Someone reported threats being made, so I responded to the call." Their conversation was interrupted by an announcement that the housing case would be entering the courtroom soon. Denise thanked the officer politely, and guided Amara back to where the other tenants were gathering. "Do you know that police officer, Mom?" Amara whispered as they walked away. "He's the one who pulled us over that night with the taillight, remember?" Denise replied quietly. "I know, but you talk to him like you know him more." Denise sighed. "Small city, baby. Paths cross sometimes." The housing case was called, and they filed into courtroom C. It was smaller than Amara had imagined, with wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that buzzed faintly overhead. The judge, an older white woman with silver-rimmed glasses, looked stern but not unkind as she reviewed the papers before her. Amara sat next to her mother, trying to be still and quiet as the adults began talking in formal, complicated language. The lawyer for the building owner spoke first, using big words like defamation and contractual obligations. Amara didn't understand most of it, but she could tell from the tight expressions around her that it wasn't good for their side. The Tenants Association had scraped together enough money to hire a young lawyer named Mr. Wilson. He seemed nervous but determined as he presented their case, showing pictures of mold in bathrooms, broken heating units, and other problems that had gone unfixed despite years of complaints. As the proceedings continued, Amara's attention wandered. She noticed a door at the side of the courtroom opening, and to her surprise, Officer Reynolds entered. He took a seat near the back, apparently waiting for his own case to be called. The judge was asking questions now, her voice sharp as she addressed the building owner's representative. These conditions, if accurately represented in these photographs, would indeed violate city housing codes. "Are you disputing the authenticity of these images?" The slick-haired lawyer adjusted his tie. "Your Honor, we acknowledge some maintenance issues exist, but we assert they've been exaggerated by the Tenants Association as part of a coordinated effort to damage my client's business reputation." Mr. Wilson stood up quickly. "Your Honor, we have inspection reports that confirm these conditions. The tenants have filed proper maintenance requests repeatedly over the past 3 years, with minimal response." The back and forth continued with terms that made Amara's eyes glaze over. She pulled out her book, a library copy of Matilda that she'd been saving for just such a boring situation, and began to read quietly. She was so absorbed in her book that she almost missed it when Mr. Chen was called to testify about the conditions in his apartment. He spoke carefully, his accent thick but his words clear as he described the persistent leak that had damaged his ceiling and the management's failure to address it properly. "They send man who put bucket, say, we'll fix next week." "That was 7 months ago," he explained, his dignity evident despite his frustration. The building owner's lawyer rose for cross-examination. His questions were pointed, almost aggressive. "Mr. Chen, isn't it true that you've been consistently late with rent payments over the past year?" Mr. Chen's face flushed. "2 times only when my hours cut at work. I pay late fee. What does this have to do with my ceiling? And you've been hosting family members not on the lease, correct? Your brother stayed with you for 3 months last year." Mr. Wilson objected, but the damage was done. One by one, the tenants who testified were subjected to similar treatment. Their character and habits questioned, their complaints minimized. When Mrs. Washington took the stand and was asked about unregistered pets in her apartment, Amara saw her mother's face tighten with anger. Mrs. Washington had a small bird that brought her comfort since her husband died. Everyone in the building knew about it, and no one had ever complained. Amara felt a heaviness in the air as the building owner's side presented their case. They showed selective photographs of the building's better-maintained areas and quoted lease clauses about tenant responsibilities. They portrayed the Tenants Association as troublemakers looking for handouts. Through it all, Amara noticed Officer Reynolds watching intently from his seat in the back. His expression was thoughtful, almost concerned as he observed the proceedings. Once, when the building owner's lawyer made a particularly dismissive comment about these kinds of tenants, she saw the officer's jaw tighten slightly. The morning dragged on, and Amara's stomach began to growl. She hadn't eaten much breakfast. Too nervous about the day ahead, Denise squeezed her hand reassuringly, whispering that they would break for lunch soon. Just as the judge was about to call a recess, the courtroom door opened again, and 2 more police officers entered. They approached Officer Reynolds, speaking to him in low voices. He nodded, gathered his things, and followed them out. Amara felt oddly disappointed. She had wanted to talk to him again, though she wasn't sure why. There was something about him that made her curious. The way he had been kind during the traffic stop. How he remembered her name. The thoughtful look on his face as he listened to the tenants' testimonies. As they filed out of the courtroom for the lunch break, Amara tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Will we win, Mom?" Denise looked tired, the morning's proceedings weighing heavily on her. "I don't know, baby. It's hard to fight people with money and power, but we have to try." They sat on a bench in the hallway sharing a sandwich Denise had packed. The other tenants gathered nearby, their voices low as they discussed how the morning had gone. No one seemed very hopeful. Amara chewed thoughtfully, watching the people pass by in the busy courthouse corridor. Somewhere in this building, Officer Reynolds was testifying in another case. She wondered if the judge in that courtroom was being fair, if the people there were telling the truth. What Amara didn't know yet was that their paths would cross again before the day was through, and that when they did, nothing would be quite the same afterward. After lunch, the tenants filed back into courtroom C, the weight of the morning's proceedings heavy on their shoulders. Amara noticed that many of them looked tired now, the hope they'd arrived with dimming in the face of the building owner's aggressive lawyer and his sharp questions. Denise smoothed Amara's dress as they sat down. "Just a few more hours?" she whispered. "You're being so good today." Amara nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. During lunch, she'd been thinking about Officer Reynolds and the traffic stop that night. She remembered how scared her mom had been at first, and how the officer had explained things to her in a way she could understand. She thought about the helpful advice he'd given about where to get the car fixed and the license renewed. Most of all, she remembered how he'd listened when she spoke up about her mom working hard and being tired. Adults didn't always really listen to kids, but he had. The afternoon session began with the judge calling for final statements from both sides. Mr. Wilson, the tenant's lawyer, spoke passionately about the right to safe and habitable housing. But even Amara could tell he seemed defeated by the building owner's much more experienced attorney. When the building owner's lawyer stood for his closing statement, his confidence filled the room. "Your Honor, while we sympathize with the challenges faced by the tenants, the fact remains that many of these alleged issues have been exaggerated or were caused by tenant negligence. My client has invested significant resources in this property and has responded appropriately to properly submitted maintenance requests." He gestured toward the tenants. "What we have here is not a case of neglect by the property owner, but rather a coordinated attempt by certain tenants to avoid their legal and financial obligations by creating a false narrative of victimhood." Amara didn't understand all the words, but she felt her mother stiffen beside her. Mrs. Washington, sitting on Amara's other side, made a soft sound of disbelief. The lawyer continued, "We ask that you dismiss this complaint and consider our countersuit for damages to my client's business reputation." As he sat down, the courtroom door opened quietly, and Officer Reynolds slipped back in. His case must have finished. He took a seat in the back row, his presence barely noticed by anyone except Amara, who had been watching the door. The judge adjusted her glasses and reviewed her notes. "I'll take these arguments under advisement," she said. "Before I make my ruling, does anyone else wish to speak on this matter?" The room was quiet. Mr. Wilson looked at the tenants questioningly, but they all seemed resigned now, unwilling to face more scrutiny and dismissal. Amara felt something rising inside her, a feeling she couldn't quite name. It wasn't anger exactly, but a sense that something wasn't right. The building owner's lawyer had made it sound like her mom and the others were making things up or trying to get away with something, but she knew that wasn't true. She'd seen the mold in Mr. Chen's bathroom ceiling. She'd felt the cold in their apartment when the heat didn't work properly last winter. She'd heard her mother on the phone, again and again, reporting problems that never got fixed. Without really planning to, she found herself raising her hand high in the air. The judge noticed and peered over her glasses with mild surprise. "Young lady, this is not a classroom. If you need to be excused, please speak to your parent. No, Your Honor, Amara said, standing up beside her seat. I want to speak too about our building. Denise tugged gently at her daughter's dress. Amara, sit down, she whispered urgently. This isn't the time. But the judge was looking at Amara with curiosity now. How old are you, young lady? 8, Your Honor, almost 9, Amara replied, standing straight and tall like she'd been taught to do when addressing adults. The judge's expression softened slightly. I see. And you live in the building in question? Yes, ma'am, with my mom. Amara gestured to Denise, who looked both embarrassed and concerned. The building owner's lawyer stood quickly. Your Honor, surely we're not going to allow a child to testify in these proceedings. She cannot possibly understand the legal. I understand that a judge is supposed to listen to everybody before deciding what's fair, Amara interrupted, her clear voice cutting through the lawyer's objection. A murmur of surprise rippled through the courtroom. The judge actually smiled slightly before composing her features again. Out of the mouths of babes, she murmured. Then more loudly, while this is unconventional, I'm inclined to hear what this young lady has to say. She looked at Denise, with parental permission, of course. All eyes turned to Denise, who hesitated before nodding slowly. Yes, Your Honor. If Amara wants to speak, I won't stop her. Very well. The judge gestured to the front of the courtroom. Come forward, young lady. Amara walked to the front, her shiny black shoes making soft tapping sounds on the worn carpet. She noticed Officer Reynolds sitting up straighter in his seat, watching with interest. Instead of going to the witness stand, Amara stopped in the open space before the judge's bench. She took a deep breath, just like her teacher had taught her to do before giving presentations in class. My name is Amara Jenkins, she began. I've lived in our building for 3 years since I was 5. I know it's not the fanciest place, but it's our home. She looked around at the familiar faces from her building, Mrs. Washington with her kind eyes, Mr. Chen who always said hello, the family from the first floor whose son sometimes played hopscotch with her on the sidewalk. In the winter, sometimes it gets so cold in our apartment that my mom has to turn on the oven and leave the door open a little bit to warm up the kitchen. She knows it's not safe, but she does it anyway, so I won't be cold when I'm doing my homework. The building owner's lawyer cleared his throat. Your Honor, this is clearly rehearsed testimony that, I assure you it is not, Denise interjected firmly. I had no idea she was going to speak. The judge held up her hand for silence. Continue, Amara. Amara nodded. My friend Lisa, who lives downstairs, her little brother got sick from the black stuff growing in their bathroom. The doctor at the clinic said it was because of mold. Their mom cleans all the time, but the black stuff keeps coming back because there's water leaking somewhere inside the wall. She pointed to a folder on the lawyer's table. Those pictures Mr. Wilson showed, they're real. I've seen all those things myself. She turned to look directly at the building owner's lawyer. Nobody's making anything up. Nobody's trying to get out of paying rent. We just want things fixed so our homes don't make us sick. There was a stillness in the courtroom, now all eyes on this small girl speaking with such straightforward conviction. Last month, my mom got pulled over by a police officer because our car had a broken taillight. Amara turned, her eyes finding Officer Reynolds in the back of the room. He could have given my mom a big ticket that we couldn't afford, but he didn't. He listened when I told him my mom works really hard. He was fair. Officer Reynolds' expression changed from surprise to something unreadable as he realized she was talking about him. Amara turned back to the judge. That's all we want, for someone to listen and be fair. Our building owner keeps promising to fix things but never does. Then they blame us when we complain. She gestured around the courtroom. Everybody here today missed work or school to come tell you about it. That means it's really important to us. She took another deep breath. My teacher says that justice means everyone gets treated right, not just people with lots of money or nice clothes or fancy lawyers. I hope that's true. Thank you for listening to me. With that, Amara fell silent, suddenly aware of all the eyes on her. The courtroom remained quiet for several seconds. Then Mrs. Washington began to applaud softly, and others joined in until the judge tapped her gavel gently. Thank you, Amara, the judge said. her voice gentler than it had been all day. "You may return to your seat now." As Amara walked back to her mother, she passed the building owner's table. The lawyer was whispering urgently to his client, a man in an expensive suit who had shown up only for the afternoon session. The man was staring at Amara with an uncomfortable expression, as if seeing her, really seeing her, for the first time. When Amara sat down, Denise wrapped an arm around her shoulders and hugged her close. "Where did that come from?" she whispered, a mix of astonishment and pride in her voice. Amara shrugged. "I just said what was true." The judge shuffled her papers, then addressed the courtroom. "In light of all testimony heard today, including our youngest witness, I'm going to take a brief recess to review the evidence again before making my ruling." She stood. "Court will resume in 15 minutes. As people began to move around, stretching their legs during the break, Amara noticed Officer Reynolds making his way toward them. He stopped beside their bench, removing his hat respectfully. "Ms. Jenkins?" He nodded to Denise. Then, looking at Amara with something like admiration, he added, "That was quite a speech, young lady." Amara smiled shyly. "I remembered what you said that night, about doing your job, but also being fair." The officer looked thoughtful. "I'm glad that made an impression on you." He hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry to hear about the problems in your building. No one should have to live with those conditions, especially not children." Denise regarded him with cautious surprise. "Thank you, Officer Reynolds. It's been a struggle." "Mom, can I ask Officer Reynolds something?" Amara whispered, though not quietly enough. Denise nodded, and Amara looked up at the tall policeman. "Are you going to stay for the rest of our case? To hear what the judge decides?" Officer Reynolds checked his watch. "My shift starts in an hour, but..." He seemed to make a decision. "Yes, I think I can stay until the ruling. I'd like to see how this turns out." When the judge returned and everyone settled back into their seats, there was a different energy in the room. The building owner and his lawyer were still conferring in hushed, urgent tones. The tenants sat straighter, a spark of hope rekindled. The judge called the court to order. "Before I give my ruling, I understand the building owner wishes to address the court again." "Mr. Phillips?" The man in the expensive suit stood, looking uncomfortable. "Your Honor, after consultation with my attorney and reflection on today's testimony, particularly that of young Miss Jenkins, I would like to propose a settlement." A murmur ran through the tenants section. Amara looked up at her mother questioningly, but Denise was focused intently on the building owner. "We are prepared to dismiss our countersuit entirely and commit to a comprehensive repair schedule to address all documented issues within 60 days. Additionally, we will freeze rent increases for current tenants for a period of 1 year, while these improvements are made." The judge raised her eyebrows. "That's quite a change in position, Mr. Phillips." He cleared his throat. "Yes, well, sometimes we need to be reminded of our social responsibilities. I purchased this building as an investment, but these people live there. It's their home." He glanced briefly at Amara. "No child should worry about being cold or getting sick because of housing conditions." Mr. Wilson, the tenant's lawyer, stood quickly. "Your Honor, may we have a brief recess to discuss this offer with our clients?" The judge nodded. 20 minutes. As the tenants gathered in the hallway to discuss the unexpected offer, Amara slipped away from her mother's side. She spotted Officer Reynolds standing near a window, checking messages on his phone. "Are you going to leave now?" she asked, approaching him. He looked up, surprised. "Not yet. I want to hear if your neighbors accept the settlement." He put his phone away and knelt down to her level. "That was a brave thing you did in there, Amara, speaking up like that." She shrugged. "I was nervous. But sometimes kids see things differently than grown-ups do. My mom always says I notice everything." "That's a good quality," Officer Reynolds said with a smile. "Maybe you'll be a lawyer someday, or a judge." Amara considered this, then shook her head. "I think I might want to be a police officer, one who helps people feel safe instead of scared." Something flickered in Officer Reynolds' eyes, surprise, and something deeper that Amara couldn't quite name. Before he could respond, Denise called for her daughter to rejoin the group. "I have to go," Amara said. but thank you for staying to watch." As she ran back to her mother, she didn't realize that her simple words had left Officer Reynolds deep in thought, or that this day in court would be remembered by many as the beginning of something important, not just for the tenants of one rundown building, but for the relationship between a community and those sworn to protect it. The judge's gavel would soon bring this chapter to a close, but the story that had begun with a routine traffic stop was far from over. When the court reconvened, the atmosphere had completely changed. The tenants returned with Mr. Wilson, who stood to address the judge. "Your Honor, my clients have discussed Mr. Phillips' offer and are prepared to accept the terms, with one additional request, that the court maintain oversight of the repair schedule to ensure compliance." The judge nodded. "Mr. Phillips, do you agree to court supervision of the repair process?" The building owner rose reluctantly. "Yes, Your Honor." "Then I will approve this settlement and schedule progress hearings at 30 and 60 days. The judge looked pleased as she made notes in her file. Sometimes the best resolutions come not from judicial rulings but from parties finding common ground. Court is adjourned. As the gavel fell, a wave of relief washed over the tenants. There were smiles, hugs, and even a few tears. Mrs. Washington clasped Amara's hands in her gnarled ones. "Child, you have the spirit of your grandmother in you," she said warmly. She never feared speaking truth either. Amara beamed at the comparison. Her grandmother had passed away before she was born, but her mother often told stories of the strong-willed woman who had marched for civil rights and taught in community schools for 40 years. As people began gathering their belongings, Amara noticed Officer Reynolds still waiting by the back wall. He caught her eye and gave a small nod of approval before turning to leave. "Mom, can I go say goodbye to Officer Reynolds?" Amara asked, tugging at her mother's sleeve. Denise hesitated, looking at the departing police officer. Something in her expression softened. "All right, but be quick. We need to head home soon." Amara hurried across the nearly empty courtroom. "Officer Reynolds," she called out just as he reached the door. He turned, surprise evident on his face. "Hello again, Amara. I wanted to thank you for staying," she said, slightly out of breath from her quick dash. "We won. Well, not exactly won, but Mr. Phillips is going to fix everything and not raise the rent for a whole year." Officer Reynolds smiled. "I heard. Congratulations. That was a good outcome for everyone." Amara nodded enthusiastically. "And it might not have happened if you hadn't been fair that night with our car. It made me think police officers can be good listeners too." Something shifted in Officer Reynolds's expression, a mix of emotions that Amara couldn't quite read. He seemed about to say something when Denise approached, standing protectively near her daughter. "Ms. Jenkins," he acknowledged with a respectful nod. "Officer Reynolds," Denise replied, her tone carefully neutral. "I hope Amara isn't keeping you from your duties." "Not at all. I was just about to head to the station for my shift." He looked between mother and daughter. "You should be proud. You've raised a very impressive young lady." Denise's expression softened slightly. "Thank you, I am." She placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. "Come on, sweetie. We should let Officer Reynolds get to work." Amara waved goodbye as her mother guided her toward the exit. As they walked away, she heard someone call out to Officer Reynolds. Glancing back, she saw him speaking with a middle-aged man in a suit, who had been observing the court proceedings from the back. "Who's that?" she asked her mother. Denise followed her gaze. "I'm not sure. Probably another lawyer or someone from the court." What Amara didn't know was that the man talking to Officer Reynolds was Captain Thomas Williams, the precinct commander who had come to observe another case and had stayed to witness the unexpected events in Courtroom C. And their conversation would have consequences that would ripple through the community in the days to come. 2 weeks later, life had mostly returned to normal. The promised repairs had begun in their building, with contractors finally fixing the leaking pipes and replacing the moldy drywall in several apartments. Mr. Phillips had even hired a new property manager who actually answered the phone when tenants called with concerns. Amara was at her desk in Ms. Parker's third-grade class, carefully working on a math problem, when there was a knock at the classroom door. The school secretary stepped in and whispered something to Ms. Parker, who looked over at Amara with surprise. "Amara, you have a visitor in the office. You can take your things. It's almost dismissal time anyway." Curious and a little nervous, Amara packed her backpack and followed the secretary down the hallway. Had something happened to her mom? But when they reached the office, it wasn't Denise waiting for her. Officer David Reynolds stood in the school office, hat in hand, looking slightly out of place among the colorful bulletin boards and children's artwork. When he saw Amara, he smiled. "Hello, Amara. I hope it's okay that I stopped by. I called your mother first and she said it would be all right." Amara nodded, still surprised to see him. "Is everything okay? Did we do something wrong?" "No, nothing like that," he assured her quickly. "Actually, I came to invite you and your mother to an event at the community center this Saturday. We're starting a new program called Coffee with Cops, where officers meet with community members in a relaxed setting to talk and get to know each other better. I thought you might be interested." Amara's eyes widened. "Like a party with police officers?" Officer Reynolds chuckled. "Sort of. There will be refreshments and some activities for kids. It's a chance for people to ask questions and share concerns in a friendly environment." He handed her a colorful flyer. "Your mother already said you can come, but I wanted to invite you personally. What you said in court that day. It made a lot of people think, including me." Amara studied the flyer, which showed smiling officers talking with community members of all ages. "Will you be there?" "I will," he confirmed. "In fact, I'm helping to organize it. Captain Williams, he's my boss. He was in court that day, too. He heard what you said about wanting police officers to help people feel safe instead of scared. It got us thinking about how we can do better." Amara felt a warm glow of pride. "I'll definitely come. Can I bring my friend Lisa too? The one I told the judge about?" "Of course, the more the better." Officer Reynolds checked his watch. "I should get back on patrol now. But I'll see you Saturday, okay?" Amara nodded enthusiastically. Saturday. As Officer Reynolds left, the school secretary gave Amara a curious look. "You know that police officer?" "Yes, ma'am," Amara replied with dignity. "We're working together to make our neighborhood better." That evening, Amara could hardly contain her excitement as she told her mother about Officer Reynolds' visit. "He came to my school, Mom, just to invite me to the coffee thing. And he said what I said in court made people think." Denise listened, with a thoughtful expression as she stirred the pot of spaghetti sauce on the stove. "It seems like you made quite an impression on Officer Reynolds. Can we really go on Saturday? He said you already said yes." "I did," Denise confirmed. "I think it's important to be part of these conversations." She hesitated. "To be honest, I've never been comfortable around police officers. Growing up, we were taught to avoid them, not talk to them." Amara climbed onto a kitchen chair. "Why?" Denise turned down the heat under the pot and sat across from her daughter. "It's complicated, baby. There's a long history of misunderstandings between police and communities like ours. Sometimes those misunderstandings led to people getting hurt." "Like in the books about Dr. King?" Amara asked. They had been reading age-appropriate books about civil rights history in school. "Yes, like that. And even though things are better now than they were then, there's still work to do." Denise reached across the table to take Amara's hand. "That's why what happened in court was so special. You spoke from your heart and people listened, including Officer Reynolds. That doesn't always happen." Amara considered this. "So, going to the coffee thing is important?" "I think it is," Denise said with a small smile. "Building bridges is always important." Saturday arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures. Perfect weather for the community event. The community center was already bustling when Amara and Denise arrived, with police officers in casual uniforms mingling with local residents. Tables had been set up with coffee, juice, and pastries, and in one corner an officer was demonstrating how police equipment worked to a fascinated group of children. Amara spotted Officer Reynolds immediately. He was talking with an elderly man but noticed them as soon as they entered. Excusing himself, he came over to greet them. "Ms. Jenkins, Amara. I'm so glad you could make it," he said, genuine warmth in his voice. "We have a great turnout today." Denise nodded, looking around. "It's good to see so many faces from the neighborhood, and officers too." That was the goal, Officer Reynolds explained, to bring everyone together in a space where we can just talk like regular people. He gestured toward a tall, distinguished-looking man in a police uniform with captain's bars on his shoulders. Captain Williams would like to meet Amara, if that's okay with you. Denise hesitated only briefly before nodding. Of course. As they followed Officer Reynolds through the crowd, Amara noticed how people reacted to him, with respect but also with a growing ease that hadn't been there before. Several neighbors from their building called out greetings, and Mrs. Washington actually patted his arm as they passed. Officer Reynolds has been a regular visitor at our building since the court hearing, Denise explained quietly to Amara. He's been checking in to make sure the repairs are getting done properly. This was news to Amara. He has? You didn't tell me. I didn't want to make too much of it, Denise admitted. But yes, he's been helpful. Captain Williams greeted them with a firm handshake for Denise and a warm smile for Amara. So you're the young lady I've been hearing so much about, he said. Officer Reynolds tells me you might want to join the force someday. Amara nodded seriously. I think so. If I can help make things better. Well, we could certainly use more officers with your insight and courage, the captain replied. In fact, that's part of why we organized today's event. Your words in that courtroom struck a chord with many of us. He gestured around the community center. We realized we've been policing this neighborhood for years without really knowing. The people who live here, their challenges, their concerns, their dreams, that's something we want to change. Denise looked skeptical. With all due respect, Captain, we've heard promises before. That's fair, he acknowledged. Words are easy. Actions matter more. That's why this isn't just a one-time event. We're establishing a community advisory board to meet monthly with precinct leadership. We'd like both adults and young people to participate. He looked directly at Amara, including voices like yours if you're interested. Before Amara could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. A group of teenagers had arrived, their body language tense and defensive. One of them, a tall boy with close-cropped hair, scanned the room with obvious suspicion. That's Lisa's brother, Amara whispered to her mother. Anthony. He got stopped by police last month for no reason. He was just walking home from basketball practice. Captain Williams overheard. Is that right? He asked quietly. Denise nodded. It happens to young men in our neighborhood quite often, Captain. Especially young black men. The captain's expression grew thoughtful. Perhaps you could introduce me, if he's willing to talk. Denise seemed surprised by the request but agreed. As they made their way toward the group of teenagers, Officer Reynolds touched Amara's shoulder lightly. Would you like to see something while your mom and the captain talk with the older kids? He asked. We have a special activity set up in the next room. Curious, Amara followed him to a smaller room off the main hall. Inside, several children were gathered around tables with paper, markers, and craft supplies. A female officer was helping them create something. What are they making? Amara asked. Vision boards, Officer Reynolds explained. Pictures of what they think a perfect community would look like. We're going to display them at the station and the community center to remind everyone what we're working toward. Amara's eyes lit up. Can I make one too? That's why I brought you here, he smiled. I'd like to see your vision, Amara. For the next hour, Amara worked diligently on her board, carefully cutting out pictures from magazines and adding her own drawings. The female officer, whose name tag read Garcia, stopped by occasionally to offer suggestions or materials. When Denise came looking for her daughter, she found Amara proudly displaying her finished vision board to Officer Reynolds. See, I put a playground here, Amara was explaining, and a community garden where everyone can grow food. And this is our building with a new roof and no more leaks. And here's the police station, but it's also a place where people can come for help with other things too, not just emergencies. Officer Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. That's a great idea, expanding what the police station can offer to the community. Denise watched this interaction with a complex expression, part pride in her daughter, part lingering wariness, but also a growing sense of cautious hope. Mom! Amara exclaimed, noticing her. "Look what I made. Officer Reynolds says they're going to hang it up at the police station where everyone can see it." "It's wonderful, baby," Denise said sincerely. "You've thought of everything." Officer Reynolds stood, giving mother and daughter some space. "Amara has quite a vision for the future," he said to Denise, "and a gift for bringing people together. I think we could all learn something from her." Denise studied him for a moment. "You really mean that, don't you?" "I do," he replied simply. "That day in court, it changed something for me, made me see things differently." Before Denise could respond, Captain Williams appeared in the doorway. "Reynolds, could you join us? Anthony and some of the other young men have some experiences they'd like to share with us. Experiences we need to hear." Officer Reynolds nodded, his expression serious. "Of course." He turned back to Amara and Denise. "Will you stay a while longer? This conversation is important." Denise hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, we'll stay." As they followed Officer Reynolds back to the main room, Amara clutched her vision board tightly. She didn't fully understand all the complex history and tensions between the police and her community. She couldn't know yet how her simple words in a courtroom had created ripples that were slowly, subtly changing patterns that had existed for generations. What she did know was that people were talking to each other now, really talking and really listening, in ways they hadn't before. And somehow she had helped make that happen. When they entered the main room, they found Anthony and his friends seated in a circle with Captain Williams and several other officers. The teenagers looked guarded but engaged, their postures gradually relaxing as they realized the officers were genuinely listening to their stories and concerns. Amara took a seat next to her mother, her vision board balanced carefully on her lap. As the conversation continued around them, touching on difficult topics with honesty and respect, she felt a quiet sense of pride. This was just the beginning of something important, something that might one day help make her vision board's ideal community a reality. And it had all started with a broken taillight and a little girl who wasn't afraid to speak up. 6 months passed, bringing changes both big and small to Amara's community. The repairs in their apartment building had been completed on schedule, with court oversight ensuring that Mr. Phillips fulfilled all his promises. The leaky pipes were fixed, the mold removed, and the heating system finally worked properly throughout the entire building. But the changes went beyond physical improvements. The Coffee with Cops event had evolved into a monthly gathering, rotating between different locations in the neighborhood. The community advisory board that Captain Williams had proposed was now an active group with 15 members, including Anthony, Mrs. Washington, and Denise, who had reluctantly agreed to join after being nominated by her neighbors. Amara had become something of a local celebrity. Her story had been featured in the community newspaper, complete with a photo of her holding her vision board. The article had caught the attention of the city council, leading to an invitation for Amara to speak at a public meeting about neighborhood improvement initiatives. It was a crisp autumn morning when Amara stood at the kitchen counter, carefully packing her lunch for school. Denise watched her daughter with a mixture of pride and amazement, still sometimes surprised by the confident young person Amara was becoming. "Don't forget, we have the ceremony at the community center after school today," Denise reminded her, pouring coffee into a travel mug. Amara nodded, adding an apple to her lunch bag. "I remember. Officer Reynolds said to wear something nice." "Your purple dress is clean and pressed," Denise said. "I laid it out on your bed." The ceremony they were preparing for was the official launch of the Bridge Builders program, a new initiative created by the police department in partnership with community organizations. The program would bring officers into schools for positive interactions with students, create mentorship opportunities, and establish a youth council to advise on issues affecting young people in the neighborhood. And it had all started with Amara's words in court that day. As they walked to Amara's school, they passed Officer Garcia in her patrol car. She honked lightly and waved. Amara waved back enthusiastically, while Denise offered a more reserved but genuine smile. "You know, 6 months ago I would have tensed up just seeing a patrol car on our street," Denise admitted quietly. "It's different now." Because we know them as people, not just uniforms? Amara asked. Denise looked at her daughter with surprise. Yes, exactly. Where did you hear that? Officer Reynolds said it at the last community meeting. He said uniforms can make people forget there's a regular person inside them. Denise chuckled. You don't miss anything, do you? Nope, Amara replied cheerfully. That's why I'm going to be a good police officer someday. Or maybe a judge. I haven't decided yet. After school, Amara changed into her purple dress in the girls' bathroom, carefully smoothing the fabric and adjusting her braids. Her friend Lisa, who was also attending the ceremony with her family, helped her with the buttons at the back. Are you nervous about going on stage? Lisa asked. Amara considered the question. A little, but I'm more excited. Officer Reynolds said I don't have to say much, just help with the ribbon cutting. When Denise arrived to pick her up, she brought a surprise, a small bouquet of daisies. These are from Mrs. Washington, she explained. She said every important lady needs flowers on her big day. The community center had been transformed for the occasion. Colorful banners hung from the ceiling, and rows of chairs faced a small stage at the front of the room. One wall displayed enlarged copies of vision boards created by local children, with Amara's prominently featured in the center. Captain Williams greeted them at the door, resplendent in his formal uniform. Our guest of honor has arrived, he said warmly, bending slightly to shake Amara's hand. Are you ready for your big moment? Amara nodded, clutching her flowers. I think so. Just be yourself, the captain advised. That's what got us all here in the first place. The room filled quickly with a diverse crowd, community members, police officers, city officials, and journalists from local news outlets. Amara recognized many faces now familiar from months of community meetings and events. Mr. Chen waved from his seat beside Mrs. Washington. Anthony and his friends occupied a row near the back, their initial skepticism having evolved into cautious engagement with the new initiatives. Officer Reynolds found them just before the ceremony was set to begin. He looked different in his formal uniform, with polished buttons and a tie, but his smile was the same as he knelt to Amara's level. Nervous? He asked quietly. A little, she admitted. There are a lot of people. Just focus on one friendly face if it helps, he suggested. That's what I do when I have to speak in public. I'll look for you, Amara decided. He seemed touched by this. I'll be right there in the front row. Standing again, he addressed Denise. We have reserved seats for you both up front. Would you like to take your places now? We're about to begin. As they made their way to their seats, Amara noticed a photographer from the community newspaper taking pictures. She sat up straight, remembering her mother's lessons about good posture and making a positive impression. Captain Williams stepped up to the podium to begin the ceremony. He welcomed everyone and acknowledged the city officials present before getting to the heart of the matter. 6 months ago, something remarkable happened in a courtroom not far from here, he began. A young member of our community reminded us, all of something we should never have forgotten, that our job as police officers is to help people feel safe, not afraid. He gestured toward Amara. Sometimes it takes a child's simple truth to make adults see what's been right in front of them all along. What followed was a series of conversations, difficult, honest conversations that have brought us to where we are today. The captain outlined the Bridge Builders program, explaining how it would work to strengthen relationships between police and the community, with special emphasis on youth engagement. He acknowledged the community advisory board members, asking them to stand and be recognized. When Denise rose with the other board members, Amara felt a surge of pride. Her mother had been hesitant at first, unsure if her voice would really be heard or valued, but over the months, she had become one of the most active members, bringing concerns forward and working collaboratively on solutions. And now, Captain Williams continued, I'd like to invite Officer David Reynolds to say a few words. As many of you know, Officer Reynolds has been instrumental in developing this program. Officer Reynolds approached the podium, looking momentarily nervous before his eyes found Amara in the front row. He smiled slightly, then addressed the crowd. Thank you all for being here today. When I joined the police force 8 years ago, I had a clear vision of what I wanted to do: protect and serve my community. Somewhere along the way, though, I lost sight of what community really means. It's not just a place on a map or a collection of streets to patrol. It's people, real people with lives and dreams and challenges. He paused, his expression serious. 6 months ago, I was reminded of that truth in the most unexpected way. I was sitting in a courtroom waiting for a case when I witnessed a young girl stand up and speak her truth. She wasn't trying to make a statement or change the world. She was just being honest about what she saw and felt. Officer Reynolds looked directly at Amara now. What she said that day changed me. It changed many of us. She reminded us that the uniform we wear doesn't define us, our actions do, and that the people we serve judge us not by our words or our intentions, but by how we make them feel. Ache. Murmur of agreement ran through the crowd. Amara sat very still, a warm feeling spreading through her chest as she listened. The Bridge Builders program isn't just about improving police-community relations, Officer Reynolds continued. It's about recognizing that we are all part of the same community. We share the same streets, the same schools, the same hopes for a safe and thriving neighborhood. And we can only achieve that by working together, listening to each other, and sometimes being brave enough to speak difficult truths. He gestured toward the wall of vision boards. We asked our young people to show us their vision of a perfect community. Now it's our job, all of us, not just the police, to work toward making that vision a reality. Officer Reynolds stepped back from the podium to enthusiastic applause. Captain Williams returned to introduce the mayor, who spoke briefly about the city's commitment to supporting the new initiative with resources and funding. Finally, it was time for the ribbon-cutting ceremony that would officially launch the Bridge Builders program. Captain Williams invited Amara to join him and Officer Reynolds on stage. With careful steps, Amara walked up to stand between the two officers. A large blue ribbon had been stretched across the stage with oversized ceremonial scissors waiting nearby. "Before we cut this ribbon," Captain Williams said, "we have a special presentation to make." He nodded to Officer Reynolds, who produced a small box from his pocket. "Amara Jenkins," Officer Reynolds began, his voice carrying clearly through the room. "In recognition of your courage, honesty, and vision that helped create the Bridge Builders program, we would like to present you with the first ever Community Bridge Builder Award." He opened the box to reveal a small medal on a purple ribbon, Amara's favorite color. The medal was shaped like a bridge, with the words, "Building Connections, Creating Community," engraved on its surface. This award will be given annually to a young person who demonstrates exceptional leadership in bringing our community together, Officer Reynolds explained. "You are its first recipient." Stunned, Amara stood very still as Captain Williams placed the medal around her neck. The weight of it felt strange but important against her chest. The room erupted in applause, with Mrs. Washington leading a standing ovation from her seat. When the applause finally died down, Captain Williams handed Amara the ceremonial scissors. "Would you do the honors?" he asked, with Officer Reynolds on one side and Captain Williams on the other. Amara carefully positioned the large scissors on the ribbon. She took a deep breath and cut, officially launching the program that had grown from her simple words in court. As camera flashes captured the moment, Amara looked out at the crowd and found her mother's face. Denise was crying, but they were happy tears, her smile wide and proud. After the ceremony, many people approached to congratulate Amara and shake her hand. The mayor called her a future leader. The city council members wanted photos with her. Even Mr. Phillips, the building owner who had once been their adversary, came to express his admiration. But the moment that meant the most to Amara came later, as the crowd was thinning out. Anthony, Lisa's brother, approached with his friends. The tall teenager had been one of the most skeptical about the new police initiatives, his own experiences having left him with deep distrust. "That was pretty cool, what you did," he told. Amara, nodding toward her medal. "You really changed things around here." "Not by myself," Amara replied honestly. "Everyone helped." Anthony considered this. "Yeah, but it started with you. You weren't afraid to speak up." He hesitated, then added, I'm on the youth council now. Gonna make sure they hear what it's really like for kids in our neighborhood. That's perfect, Amara exclaimed. You'll be really good at that. As Anthony and his friends moved away, Officer Reynolds approached with a slice of cake from the reception table. Thought you might be hungry after all that excitement, he said, handing her the plate. Thank you, Amara said, accepting the cake gratefully. She touched the medal at her neck. And thank you for this. It's beautiful. You earned it, he replied simply. You know, in all my years as a police officer, I've never seen one person make such a difference in how people relate to each other. You have a gift, Amara. She thought about this as she took a bite of cake. I don't think it's a gift, she said finally. I think maybe people just needed someone to say the quiet part out loud. Sometimes grown-ups forget how to do that. Officer, Reynolds laughed. You might be right about that. His expression grew more serious. Whatever path you choose, whether it's becoming a police officer, or a judge, or something else entirely, I know you'll keep making a difference. Later, that evening, as Denise tucked her into bed, Amara fingered the medal that now hung on her bedpost. Mom, do you think things will stay better now, with the police and our neighborhood? Denise sat on the edge of the bed, considering the question carefully. I think building bridges is ongoing work, baby. There will still be hard days and misunderstandings. But yes, I believe things are changing for the better. And I'm so proud that you helped start that change. She kissed Amara's forehead. Get some sleep now. You've had a big day. As Denise turned out the light, Amara lay in the darkness thinking about bridges, how they connected places that were once separate, how they made crossings easier, how they had to be strong to withstand the forces that pushed against them. She thought about Officer Reynolds and how different he seemed now from that first night of the traffic stop. Not because he had changed completely, but because she had come to see all of him, not just the uniform. And she thought about her vision board, still prominently displayed at the community center, with its pictures of gardens and playgrounds and people helping each other. It wasn't just a child's craft project anymore. It had become something like a map, not of how things were, but of how they could be. As sleep began to claim her, Amara's final thoughts were not of medals or ceremonies, but of the simple moment. In that courtroom 6 months ago, when she had stood up and spoken from her heart. She hadn't known then that her words would change anything. She had just known they were true. Sometimes, she was learning. That's all it takes to build a bridge. One person brave enough to speak the truth and others willing to listen.